Hello, hello, hello. Anybody here? I hope you can hear me because I have a new headset, but I think everybody has been muted. So I'm gonna go and check out the chat. Chat. If you can hear me, say something, type something, somebody. I know there's 3 people here.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, awesome. Nice. All right. I'm just gonna, people are coming in. Okay, so you know what? I only have 40 minutes, so let's just go ahead and get started. I have a lot of cool stuff to um, talk to you about today. In case you do not know who I am, because I did extend this invitation to multiple new people, let me just do my little PowerPoint presentation here. I am Mark Moore. I teach Excel. I have a bunch of Excel lessons on eBay, oh my gosh, on Amazon and ebooks and print. And I do have my online school, so you can check that out later. But for today, we're going to do some cool stuff just talking about Excel. If you guys have any questions on the topic, just drop them in the chat and I'll try to get to them. I'm trying to do a bunch of things at the same time, doing the back end and the presentation. But you know what? I think I can handle it because you all are pretty cool. All right, so let me move this out of the way and maximize this. Okay, so last time what we did is we talked about the clipboard. We talked about all the different stuff you can do with the clipboard, and believe it or not, that was more than 40 minutes worth of material. Who would have thought? This time, we'll go as far as we can on formatting, which is going to be this part here where you see the fonts, this part where you see the alignments, and the number. Although, I will say you always see this. You see this in Word, you see this in PowerPoint, and you guys probably think you know all about it. I'm going to say you probably don't. There's a lot of very cool tricks and tips that you can learn about this. So let's go ahead and get started. Um, let's go with the buttons, just the normal buttons that you see, and then we'll go down and we'll go into the nitty gritty. So let's see. So you have all the fonts that you have here. Okay, that's pretty simple. You click on the drop down and these fonts show up. In my particular version of Excel, which is Office 365, I have this little cloud, and that means that you can download those fonts as needed. So that's pretty easy. Everybody knows how to use that. Let's talk about the font size. So font size is just normal if you want to make something larger or smaller. What most people don't realize, though, about this font size is that you are not limited to the numbers that appear here. You can put decimals if you want just by typing in right there. And you can even put lower numbers. So for example, one little trick that I like to do, and I've only done this once or twice, but you can type in test, and I want to keep it, maybe I want to hide it or something. The cheap way to hide it is just to put a 1. That makes it font size 1. It's tiny, but all the formulas don't care. Formulas can still, use that. Now you have that little dot. If that little dot annoys you, well, go ahead and make the font white, and then you can't quite see it. Just little tricks that you can do. Pretty simple, but most people realize that you can't do that. And of course, you can go over 72. Let me put this back over to automatic. All right, so that was font size. We can talk about these 2 buttons that showed up a few years ago, which is just basically make the text a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. Pretty easy. Bold, italic, underlined. I'm not even going to cover that. You can click on here and do double underline if you want. Now borders gets kind of cool. If you click on the little arrow and you click on any of these, you can draw the borders, draw the double borders, even go to different line styles. But when you go into more borders, you show up here. Now I'm going to talk about this pane exhaustively, because this pane, this window, basically is the font, the alignment, and the number all put together. This is how we used to have it in Excel 2003 before the ribbon showed up. The other way you can get to this format cells, there's a couple of ways to do it. I'm a keyboard guy, so you can actually press Control and the number 1, and it shows up. So the font is just this pane. The alignment happens to be this pane, and the number happens to be this pane. The other way you can get to it, if you're not a keyboard kind of person, click on this little button down here. And it brings up the same format cells, but in the pane of interest. We were in borders. So the borders, it's the same options that you had in that dropdown, but with a couple of different ones where a lot of people don't realize you can actually put like an X in the entire cell. This is actually quite useful because now when you put that border, you can still see the value that was there, but it means that it's no longer valid. I think that is much better than deleting a value, because when you delete the value, you can't really see anything, right? The value has been deleted, but at least keeping it there means that it's visible, but you know it's not valid. You can change the color, and we'll talk about colors in a bit. There's a couple of tricks I'll show you about colors. You can even put all of these other different types. Not a big deal. That's it on borders. I think I have basically beat that horse dead. So this fill is different than this fill. This is the color of the font, the color of the letters, and this is the actual color behind the cell, the fill of the cell. You can click on this drop down, and you have all of these standard colors, and the standard colors are down here. In old versions of Excel, in 2003, you could alter these colors. You can no longer do that as of 2007. So you're kind of stuck with that. But you can use more colors than you see here. Excel 2007 and forward, I think they support something like 16 million colors. But there's not 16 million colors here. So is Microsoft, going crazy? No, they're not. What they do is they kind of hide it behind the scenes. If you click on this more colors, so you have more gradations of the colors we just saw, but that's still not 16 million. Well, if you go to custom, now here's where you get all your 16 million colors. You can start clicking around and use any color that you want. The colors are using either the RGB or the HSL model. I'm just going to use the RGB. What that means, it's red, green, blue. There are values for red, green, and blue, and that is how it detects which color it is. So I personally, I'm not that great with colors. I'm kind of like a data guy. So when I get asked to do a presentation, I usually okay, I'm not sure what to do. Now, one thing, and I will change tabs here, you can go into themes. And these are professionally designed themes that will apply to the entire workbook if you want an entire set of colors already, applied to charts, to titles, to pivot tables. It does the whole thing. One of the bad things about themes, though, is that it will reposition stuff. So for example, let me show you this. I'm just going to create a really simple chart in a pivot table. Let's do region. I'll do north. I'll do east. I'll do west. And let me make up some sales numbers. Let's do this. Oh, look at that. The font was like super tiny. I need to make it 11. 800, 500, and let's do, I don't know, 450. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to insert a chart. Let's do, oh, that's a new chart. Okay, I'll mess with that later. we'll do this new chart. I don't like those colors. Those colors are pretty, basic. So what I'm going to do is I'll go to page, was it page layout? It was page layout. I can choose a theme, but now notice how everything jumped. The font gets bigger, everything starts moving around. So that's great. Once you choose your theme, you're kind of stuck with it, because if you have a whole dashboard and everything is positioned correctly, and then all of a sudden you change your theme, now you have to change all the positioning of everything else. So that's where themes have a downfall, in that they reposition stuff and even, but notice, I think this is kind of cool. If you notice, as I change the themes, look at the letters and the numbers on the columns and the rows. Those change also. They didn't used to, but they did. It's actually like a holistic change of Excel. It's a minor thing, but I thought it was kind of cool that somebody thought of doing that. So that is themes, and using themes when it comes to formatting. But let's go back to colors, because sometimes you may not want to use those themes. You can edit them individually, but then it becomes really confusing. So instead, what I learned through a friend of mine, who is not an Excel guru by any means, but he came up with a really, really interesting idea. And I said, oh my gosh. So I teach it now. Instead of trying to figure out what colors match, I get one of the paintings from the Impressionist masters, from Monet or from somebody who already did all of the work. And I take the colors from those pictures and I apply them to my presentation. This trick that I'm going to show you will work for PowerPoint, it'll work for Word, it'll work for Excel, any Office application. And this is how it works. It's a couple of steps, but it's really not that difficult. So first you have to find the picture that you like. So I'm going to move this over here. And this is a picture by Monet. It's called Woman with a Parasol. And I really like it. It's nice. It kind of calms me down. It's pretty cool. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. And what we want to do is we want to take some colors from this that already match and apply them into the chart that I just built. So let's pretend that I want that red. So what I've done is I've opened up, I downloaded the picture from the web. I opened it in Microsoft Paint, which comes in Windows, excuse me, in Windows. Now what I want is over here in the tools, you're going to use this little dropper. This is the color picker. So this will actually read the color that you click on. And I want that red. So I'm going to click on the eyedropper. I'm going to go down to the red. And I just click once. Now notice this is the red that I selected. Now I need the RGB value for that red. Well, all of the work is already done by Microsoft Paint. I just have to come over here, go to Edit Colors, and there is my RGB. So I'm going to write this down because I always forget. So it's 208, 80, and 55. Now we're done with Paint for now. I'm just going to minimize that. Now what I can do is I can select, let's say, North, because that was the big guy. And I'm gonna double click it, so I'm only selecting that one. I'm gonna right click, and I'm gonna change the fill. I need to change the color for that. I'm gonna click on the little arrow. I'm gonna go to More Colors. And this is back where we were at when we had all of the colors up here in the font area. I'm gonna go to Custom, and here's where you put the RGB, which was 208, 80, and 55. And there's the red that came. Let's see, can we see it? Where is it? Where is it? So there is the red that came from her flower and her waist. You're now applying it, and you would go and do the same thing for the other colors that you want. So when you're done, you're basically using this picture as your theme template. The only thing I would say is don't use like something by Pablo Picasso or something like that, because he was very dissonant and that may not go well, but you be the judge. So that is one very cool trick that I was really impressed with my friend. I was like, wow. I mean, he's a smart guy, but I was like, oh, okay, pretty good. Okay, so we talked about colors. I told you about my color trick. Same thing applies to the colors for the font. You even have the recent colors here. So, excuse me, this was the red that we just changed. Same thing here, more colors. Okay. I'm looking at the chat. No questions on colors. Okay, we're just going to move on. We'll go as far as we can within the 40 minutes that I got. Alignment. Alignment, pretty easy. This is top align, middle align, bottom align. You've seen this in Word. You can actually go ahead and angle the text. Not a big deal. This indent, most people get it. It's like clicking on tab, but the way that you use it in Excel is just a little bit different. For example, if I'm going to type in something, a list, and I want to visually delineate that there's a relationship, a parent-child relationship. I've seen a lot of people do this. Let's pretend that you go to, you want all region, and then I'm going to do north, south, east, and west. South, east, and west. I've seen so many people where they come over here and they type in a couple of spaces, and then they come over here and they type in a couple of spaces, and it never lines up correctly. Because when you print, everything moves or something happens. I said, don't use spaces. Use the indent. Then invariably, somebody's going to say, well, why don't spaces work? I used them before. I've used them for 30 years. Well, the reason spaces don't always work is because the font that you're using is something that's called a proportional font. In other words, if I do something like Ignatius, you can see, let me zoom up just a little bit so you can see what I mean. You can see that the I takes a different amount of space than the T, which takes a different amount of space than the O. So it proportions spatially the word and the letters. That's why the spaces don't work, because it always depends on that first letter, whether it's an N or an I. It just won't look well. If you do want to use spaces, what you have to use instead of indent, you have to use a monospace font. And the one that I always use is Courier New. When you do something Courier New, like Ignatius, it doesn't look that great, but the I takes as much space as the T, as much space as the I, as the T, as the A. So whenever you're doing any type of programming, if you can change your program to monospace, it's actually a lot better because you can see everything lined up. Okay, so I went off on a tangent. Let's go back and get rid of the spaces. So instead of the spaces, which is going to cause you a lot of pain, you just highlight the area and just indent. It looks like there's spaces, but if you notice, there is no space. It just indents. So that is the better way to do any type of parent-child relationship. And if you want to do more indents, just keep on clicking. I just wanted to point that out because it's a pet peeve of mine when I see spaces everywhere. I always have to use trim and get rid of them. I am going to move this sales out of the way. Wrap text is simply if you have something that says, hey, this is a long sentence and you want it to be in the same cell, you can wrap it almost like Word. Used to be Excel 2003 had 65,536, if I recall correctly. That was the limit of characters in a cell. Was it 235? I don't quite remember, but now it's something like 2 million. So you could literally write the next American novel in one cell, but please don't do that. So that is wrap. I'm going to go ahead and take that wrap off. And now we are talking about merge and center. I'm going to be biased here. I detest merge and center. I just really, really don't like it. I understand it's very pretty. When you put it in a report, you get all this nice, interesting types of things that you can do, but it's really bad when you start to deal with data and when you're a keyboard guy like me. Let me explain to you why I detest it so much. I'm gonna write this word test. I'm gonna try to center across these three because it's gonna be a nice column header. So I could merge and center, merge across, merge or unmerge. I'm just going to merge and center. I can select the column. That's okay. This is something new in 2010, by the way. But what they haven't fixed, excuse me, is if I'm a keyboard guy. So in order, I'm going to do it over here, and you can follow along if you want. If you press Control and the space bar, you can actually select the entire column. And if you press Shift and the space bar, you select the entire row. So I think that's much easier than reaching over to the mouse and start clicking around. But whenever there's anything that is merged, it drives me crazy because remember, this is the merge cell right here. So if I want to select column G and I hit Control and space, it cannot select column G. It selects the entire merged area. And that really drives me wild. If I want to resize it or something, I have to hunt around, look for the thing that's merged and unmerge it. The other reason that merge is not that great is I've seen people do it in certain cells in the data. And then when they want to sort it, you get a big error that says you cannot sort merged cells. You have to unmerge them. So that causes untold difficulties. But I'm going to show you a trick that does the same effect with none of the negatives. It's not as easy as clicking one button, but it takes 2 or 3 clicks, but I'll show you anyways, and you decide if you want to use it. I am going to unmerge it. And there's a lot more options for alignment that we don't see here because this was designed by Microsoft, and these are the most popular options. I'm going to click on this little alignment settings button, and I am here. So most everything that you can do here is right down here, right? Merge. I'll talk about shrink to fit in a little bit because it's not up here. There's the indent. But what I want to point out is the different types of horizontal alignment. You can left center, you can fill, but I want to do center across selection. This is the way that you can visually merge without messing anything up. So I'm going to move this down. Could I move it down? Okay, so I have test selected. So now I can center across selection and click on OK. I get the same visual effect, but now when I hit Control Space, I can actually select the entire column. Test does not live in column G. Well, let me highlight everything here. So this is actually what I merged on. Test is still in F3. It does not live in column G. It does not live in H. Notice how these are blank. Now, the cool thing about merge across selection versus the other cool thing about merge across selection versus merge cells is that I can type in something here and type in test2. And now test2 is merged across its own area and test is merged over here. So it is dynamic based on the values that you continue to enter. Merge, you can't do that. Merge, you would have to unmerge, select the right cell, and merge again. So it does make stuff a little bit easier. I'm going to go ahead and just fill this down to do a quick delete, and I wanted to show you a couple more tricks here. Shrink to fit. I've never used it. I've never had a reason to use it, but it is kind of cool where you can say, this is a long sentence, and I want it to fit. Just because for whatever reason in this model, let's pretend I can't change that column size. So I would shrink to fit, and that would shrink the font to just the right size so that it fits in the column. And it should update as I change the column width. This is great if you have dashboards and you have just the right positioning, because you know it all depends on your VP and on your manager, whatever they want. I'm just showing you tricks on how to get it. We don't judge them, all right? I'm going to show you another favorite trick of mine, which is fill. Sometimes you want to do some type of different formatting. You want to put like headers or borders or something to that effect. And a lot of people, they put like the single quote to make it a text, and they just start putting in the dashes. But then, of course, as soon as you do that, you're like, okay, I got to put in more dashes. Well, you don't have to do any of that. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. What you do is you just simply type in one dash with the quote to make it text. And now go back to alignment, and horizontal, you go to fill. This will repeat this until it fills the width of the column. So now you can see that you can use that, and I can drag it over, and you can do some type of the old type of borders that we used to do in computer reports. So you can kind of do that, and it's not just the dash, right? You can do, if you want to do the asterisk or whatnot, or so there's the asterisk. You can even do multiple if you want to do some type of little pattern. Go to town. The trick for this one, let me delete that, is the following. Sometimes data spills over into the next column, and you really don't want that to happen. Once again, I'm going to go to this is a long sentence. And then here you can put, like, you know, Patty, and then you can put Bob, who knows. But this one kind of looks messed up. So a lot of people, when they want to cut it off, they can type in a space. Okay, that's great, but now you got spaces messed up, and maybe you have to delete it. This is another word, you know, that's not really useful. But fill will do the truncation for you. So I'm going to come back over here, come back to horizontal, come back to fill, and click on OK. And it kind of stops it, and I don't have to have, I'm just pressing delete. Like, there's nothing here. So what's going on here? Well, when the character is shorter than the width of the column, fill will repeat it so that it fills. But the opposite is when the character is longer than the column, fill will fill it and not show the rest. So if you have names, you know, and suppose instead of this is a long sentence, let's pretend it's like Maria Conchita Alonso de la Caridad, who knows what, one of those long names, it can actually just cut it off, and you won't have to spill over. I use this all the time. It's great for reports. It might drive some people crazy, but, you know, I think that's a bonus when I can see people that are going crazy over such a simple thing. But that's just me. Okay, so we did font. We did most of font. Actually, let me just go over here. I don't want to, like, shortchange you guys. We did font, we did the size, we did this. You can do strike through, superscript. Strike through is actually really good. So you hit strike through, and there it is. This is much better for like a to-do list than just deleting it. Because if you delete it, then you forget, well, what was there? When you do strike through, you can actually see it and know that it's been cleared off. What I like to do is I put strike through up here. I go to more commands, and this is called the QAT, the quick access toolbar. I don't go to popular commands, but I go to all commands. I look for strike through and I add it here. So you do this once and it will always be in Excel. So that is what I do at work to keep track of what's been done, what's not been done, and I can print it out and send it off. It gives my boss an idea of how productive I've been. Okay, now number. Let's see, it's 11:30, so I got 10 minutes because I got the free version, so I'm down to 40 minutes. Okay, I can do this. Is this a good speed? I mean, I know I'm covering a lot, but this is being recorded, so I'll put it on YouTube on my website so you can listen to it a little bit later. All right, numbers. Numbers are awesome. Ooh, okay, so let me just type in a couple of numbers. 1,000, we'll do 80,000 or whatever that, oh, I got fill in there. Okay, let me get rid of that fill. So this is Control-1, and no, not the fill. I want the alignment, and I just want general. Okay, so these are relatively simple, right? We got the dollars, we got the percent, we got the accounting, the comma style, increase, decrease, percent. So on top of the dollar, you can have the euro, the Chinese, more accounting formats. You can actually have all of these. I did not know this, but you have Bitcoin. That thing is really taking the world by storm sometimes until it loses all of its value, but that's another discussion. So you can do all of these. Excuse me. General is general. Now what I've done is I went into number, so this is the format cells for number, okay? It looks a little bit different in that I don't have the other tabs. I'm gonna say this is a bug, because if I go to control 1, this is my number, and I should have them all here. So I think we just found a little bug in my version of Excel. Not a big deal because it's not crashing, but let's just continue. So you can show the number of decimal places, use the separator, you know, use the parentheses for negatives, all that good stuff. Now, just so we understand, because I'm not sure on everybody's level of Excel, and I'm pretending that everybody's basic. When you have a number selected, and you do what I'm going to do, which is I'm going to put the 1000 separator. Here's my sample, and I click on OK. Excel is playing a trick on you. The comma and the period are just visual manifestations of the format. You have not changed the number. If you look at the number up here in the formula bar, there is no comma, there is no period. If you actually type in a comma, when you're typing in a number, it will no longer be a number. It will be text, because Excel doesn't know what a comma is. It's just a formatting thing. So this really becomes apparent when we get to dates, which I'm going to do my best to get to dates in a couple of minutes. Let me just finish with the numbers. Currency with the dollar signs, accounting, time, percentage, all that good stuff. Now dates are really different. Oh, no, we'll do that. So we got dates. We'll do dates and custom number formats. I can talk about these for hours, but I don't have hours. So let's do custom number formats. These are all the different formats that come with Excel for dates and times and different types of formats that change colors. There is a certain logic to this and a certain coding to this, but don't bother learning it because you don't need to. What you're going to do is just use the ones that look like what you want. For example, you can see the sample here, and you can change them as you see fit. The most easiest change to understand and to use without coding knowledge is if you want to show items in thousands or millions. For example, this is 1000 in whole digits, but I only want to see it in thousands. A lot of people, what they will do is they'll divide the number by 1000, and then that's the report. And then as they update the report, everything has to be divided by 1000 over and over again. You don't need to do that. What you need to do is apply this custom number format. Click on this type and type in a comma. The comma has to go before the decimal. So now every comma strikes out a factor of 100. So it gets rid of 3 zeros. So this is in thousands. If I did not want to see the decimal because it doesn't quite make sense, well, I can get rid of that. If I wanted to see this in millions, you just type in another comma. Now, the good thing about this is actually, I'm just going to go ahead and put it in millions, understanding that it's going to be 0. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a couple of zeros. Understanding that you have not changed the number at all. You're just changing the visual representation. So that means all of the math that you have done doesn't have to be altered or changed. You're just changing how it looks. I'm going to go back to number. You can actually add like text over here. If you want to put a B or something like that, you can actually have the B appear. I'm going to go into dates because I got 5 minutes and I'm going to show you about dates. Dates are not dates. Dates are numbers, the number of days that have elapsed since January 1, 1900. So if I put 6/21, 2019, that is not 6/21. Watch this trick. I'm going to go equals I8, and I'm going to change it to the comma format. What's really there is 43,637. And the reason it's there is because it's easier now to do date arithmetic. You just go ahead and add, subtract. Every whole number is a day. Every decimal is a fraction of a day. What does this have to do with formatting? I can format the date without changing this number. I can leave it 621, which is really 43,637. Watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to, I don't want alignment, but since I'm here, I'll just go to number. I'm going to go to custom. I'm going to delete this. It's pretty easy to remember. If you do 1M, it's the month number. 2 M's, the 2-digit month number. 3 M's, the actual 3-digit abbreviation. 4 M's, the entire month. 5 M's, the first letter. 6 and more, don't do anything, okay? So that is for month. Day, it's actually pretty cool. Of course, the day. 2 does do nothing. 3 gives you the day. Now, once again, it's still going to be 621, but it's just going to show that that was a Friday. Another D gives you the entire word, and that's it for that. And then year, it doesn't do that much for year, but it does, 1Y, 2 Ys. So you can mix and match. For example, 621, 2019, I can put month, dash, D, dash, YYYY. I can put a space. I can put another DD and say that it was a Friday. And now when I click on OK, I see that 6/21/2019 was a Friday, but I still have the date here. So if you have a pivot table or slicers or any type of calculations that work off of this, the value is still going to be valid. This is just one level detached in that this 43,637 is now being made to look like 6/21/2019, which is a Friday. Okay. Okay, I am at 11:38. I know that Zoom is going to kick me out in 2 minutes. Are we good? Let me know in the chat. Questions, comments, even though I don't have time, but I can answer them in another video. Was this helpful? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Okay, so I have 2 minutes. Let's see, what else can I show you in 2 minutes? I'm trying to get everything in here. So we did the what else? Fill. Oh, pattern color. Okay, you can actually put patterns in here. You can put fill effects. So this is kind of cool. If you want to change the color of something, come over to fill, go to fill effects. Instead of the colors, you can go to fill effects here, and you can actually put different shades of gradients in different colors. So this is actually kind of cool. I mean, it can get kind of messy. I'm not a designer, but you can actually do some kind of cool little shadings and make things look 3D just using Excel. So Excel, it's not a graphics engine, but it is pretty darn cool. So that was in fill. And protection, I'm out of time, but basically, if you're going to protect a sheet and you want users to be able to change certain cells, for example, I want users to be able to change only cell A1. I would select A1, I would unlock it, and then I would protect the workbook or the sheet. That means that A1 will be unprotected, everything else will be protected. So that is a cheap trick where you can just protect certain areas and not compromise the integrity of your model. It is 11:40. I believe I just have a couple of seconds to end this. So once again, if you're an existing client, thank you so much for hanging out with me and buying my books. If not, go ahead, check out my Excel school and the books that I have. I am actually in the middle of recording a new class on Power Query, but there's so much to do and so much to record. It might take me a few weeks since I'm doing this, this is my side hustle. But okay, this has been Mark Moore. I'm out of time. I'm going to end it. Thank you so much for attending.